nice that we can be outside of town this week, hey? I'm looking forward to our practical week here at New Dam.
I don't know what they can teach me here. Look at how they're keeping these poor animals in camps like that. It's so wrong. I mean, how would you feel if you were kept like that?
Here comes Mr. Titus.
I don't care if
Don't
he is.
let him hear
I don't care.
Morning, students, morning. Welcome to the New Dam campus of the University of Namibia, Faculty of Agriculture and Natural Resources and Veterinary School. I'm Mr. Titus. So I believe you're all here to learn about the intensive grazing management system.
And viewers, welcome to you too. This is lesson 3 in our agriculture learning series from NAMCOL. We have so far in this series spoken about land reclamation in farming and extensive farming. Today we will look at intensive grazing method as a way of managing livestock. We will look at what it is and discuss the different types of intensive grazing system. Your learning objectives are to be able to explain what is meant by intensive pasture and range management, and to describe types of intensive grazing systems. Enjoy today's lesson with NAMCOL.
Why are all these animals being captured?
These are our animals in the feedlot. We use an intensive grazing management system to feed them.
What is an intensive feeding system?
It is when we keep the animals at close range and control their grazing.
Oh, yes, I can see. They don't have to go into the field to look for grass to eat at all.
Yeah.
They're being fed.
Yeah, like fattening pigs up before slaughter.
Not necessarily. But I like the way you think, young man. We might have a job here for you one day. Let's have a seat, shall we? I'm sure the young man has a lot more questions for me. Follow me.
So does it mean that intensive grazing is about keeping the animals permanently in kraals and feeding them?
That's a good question, Aina, but no. What you have to realize that these animals are not pets. This is still a farming business. Learners, you know that there are two types of grazing systems, right? Intensive and extensive.
Exactly. You keep saying grazing, but what you really mean is feeding. Animals that are grazing are roaming freely in the field, choosing what they want to eat. These animals right here, they have no choice about what they eat. No.
Okay. I can see that you're worried that this is going to be a long week for you, John. But stick around. You might actually enjoy it here. Learners, it is a fact that the intensive grazing system is the type that we use here. But no, this does not mean that we keep the animals cooped up in a cage and we're feeding them. There are many types of grazing systems that can be classified as intensive management. For example, a rotational grazing system, a paddock grazing system, and a zero grazing system. So, John, while we're saying that we follow an intensive grazing management system here, this just means that we do not allow them to graze freely anywhere they like, as would have been the case in an extensive grazing system. But it means we keep the animals at close range and control where and what they eat. We do this by rotating them between specific areas on the farm to graze, or allowing them to graze in certain paddocks. Sometimes we also feed them rations in addition to their grazing. And that is what you have seen here in the feedlot. I promise you, we're not just fattening them up like pigs for slaughter.
You should have just said so in the first place when I had asked.
Right. But now that you know, does that mean that you no longer think we're abusing animals here?
Oh, so I'm not the laughing stock. So you're making fun of me. Okay, how about you do me a favor? Tell me the difference between paddock, rotational, and zero grazing systems then.
Certainly. You see, to rotate means to take turns. So rotational grazing is about moving animals from one camp to another in a sequence or order. This is done to allow the grazing land time to recover. By the time the same area is used again, it is rested and recovered and can survive and regrow.
Well, that's completely different from what I had thought, okay?
Right. And that's our mistake. We were also nasty. We should have been open with you from the start.
Okay, so how about you tell me about paddock grazing before I get the wrong ideas as well?
Sir, yes, sir. Paddock grazing is about keeping animals in paddocks. This is usually done only for a short period while they are sick, feeding young ones or having to be fed differently from the others for any specific reason. So it is not usually the whole herd or flock that stays in paddocks, but those in need of special care and feeding.
So you're trying to tell me it's like those poor creatures over there?
John, stop that.
No, John, the situation of those poor creatures is different. I mean, those poor creatures are indeed under the zero grazing system. Zero grazing, as you observed before, means no grazing. They are just being fed in a camp or another enclosure. With zero grazing, animals are not allowed to graze in the paddock, but the farmers provide the animals with food rations and water.
Okay, I can see now that rotational grazing system is better than I had thought. At least better than extensive grazing, that is.
Well, all these systems have their pros and cons. Well, to be honest, the rotational grazing system does also has its disadvantages, to be completely honest with you.
I would guess that a disadvantage of the grazing system is that it's expensive to buy the materials for making the fences of all these paddocks and to chase the animals into the camps all the time.
Well done, Aina. You're right. The hands-on physical effort of erecting fences for paddocks takes time, effort, and money. There are high costs involved in fencing the camps, as I've discovered again this week when one of our gates broke. Which reminds me, there's a fence that needs to be fixed. As a matter of fact, let's walk this way to the car and I'll show you. Rotational grazing is about having animals move from one camp to another, as I explained before. This gives the grass time to recover. That's a major advantage of rotational grazing. Actually, the main reason for rotating animals in camps is to control their breeding. You put animals together when you want them to breed, so they do not mix with undesirable breeds of animals. Rotational grazing also increases the productivity of grass fields, because growth is not stumped, you see, and there is no overgrazing of the land. Another advantage is that the rotation of grazing breaks the life cycle of animal diseases and pests. Sometimes diseases and pests are the results of selective grazing. So when the animals are taken out of that particular paddock, the problem is sorted out. In fact, rotational grazing is clearly a far more sustainable way of grazing than extensive grazing, where animals browse around freely. Meaning rotational grazing gives a far longer period of guaranteed grazing for your livestock.
So paddock grazing does not necessarily imply rotation?
No, that is the difference between paddock and rotational grazing. Yeah. With paddock grazing, animals are kept in different paddocks, but you don't necessarily have to rotate them, unlike rotational grazing, where the focus is on rotation.
Mr. Titus,
Yes, John?
that broken gate of yours, I'm quite good at fencing. I've often helped my father on his small farm, and I was hoping you'd allow me to help you fix it. I mean, I am capable of doing it.
Woo!
Attaboy, John, attaboy. Come, right this way, right this way.
I really want to.
What, so I don't look capable of doing it?
Viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson on intensive grazing management. But now it's time for recap. Intensive grazing management is about keeping animals at a close range and controlling their grazing. There are three types of intensive grazing management systems, and they are Rotational grazing, where animals are moved from one camp to another in a sequence of rotation to allow the land to recover. With paddock grazing, animals are kept in paddocks. And zero grazing is a system where animals are not allowed to graze in paddocks, but the farmer provides food ratios to the animals. The rotational grazing system has several advantages, namely that it can increase the productivity of the grass or pasture, allow grass to recover, avoid overgrazing, break the life cycle of animal diseases and pests. The disadvantage is rotational grazing can be financially costly. Now we invite you to participate in our EC SMS competition. Send an SMS to number 5003 and in the message space write the keyword for today's lesson, intensive, which you see on the screen. Then choose the option A, B or C. Select only one for answer to our question. One SMS will cost $3 Namibian. Here is today's question. Which of the following is an advantage of rotational grazing? I repeat that. Which of the following is an advantage of rotational grazing? Is it A, prevent overgrazing, B, farmer provides food to the animals, or C, high cost of fencing? SMS your answer and we will announce the winner within 3 days. If you are the winner, we will call you to collect your prize at the Namcol Center nearest to you. It was good to be in your company today. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.